Well, it's good to have everyone here, all of our viewers. I'm joined by John Stearns today. My name is Craig Ishii. As folks may have seen in some of our previous videos about our Logitech software and products, and I'm part of the B2B product marketing team here at Logitech. And John, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, Craig, thanks for having me. Super excited to be on here. My name is John Stearns. I work for Zoom, and I lead up our Zoom Spaces go-to-market. Spaces is our Zoom rooms and workspace technology suite of our platform. So focused on all the areas that are helping our customers with flexible and hybrid work strategies and return to office. I've been in the video conferencing room industry for about 18 years here, and I'm coming up on my third year at Zoom. And really happy to be partnered with Logitech.
Very cool, very cool. Now, for the audience that's watching, we are looking to do these webinars a little bit more regularly around different topics between Logitech and Zoom. So the topic that we're talking about today, which I'll just put here on the screen, is specifically around Interop, which we're going to introduce in a second. But there's going to be a whole host of other things that we're going to want to talk about. So I know one of the things that John and I have talked about in the past is just even manageability, right? So you've got Zoom Portal, and it's a one-stop shop for everything from monitoring to firmware updates to device updates. But then you've also got Logitech Sync that helps to give helpful insights about rooms. And we're going to talk about how those two can really work together to enhance an IT administrator's success when managing rooms and devices. But today we're going to talk about Interop. And I'm going to just quickly introduce our table of contents for today. We're going to introduce what interoperability is. We're going to talk about why that is especially important when you have a room that's provisioned to Zoom rooms. We're then going to talk about all the different things that Zoom has, both software first, but also hardware that they've implemented to make this experience easier. And then we're going to talk about a fancy little product at the end that really kind of helps to provide the best of both worlds. So, John, ready to get started?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's dive in, Craig.
Okay, so I want to start with the idea of Interop first. And I've got a couple questions for John. But the basic idea is you're in a room. The room is provisioned as a Zoom room, but you're with a client or you're with a customer that is, say, Microsoft Teams or a WebEx customer. And you're saying, okay, well, the room is provisioned for Zoom. How can I meet on something that's cross-platform, something else? So you're saying the basic definition here, but that's typically a lot of times what we see when businesses are especially working with not just folks who are internal, is you're bound to encounter somebody who's not just another Zoom customer, somebody who maybe, again, on Microsoft Teams or Google Meet. So John, my first question for you, actually, we're going to stay on Interop. My first question for you is with regard to the topic of Interop, what were some of the conversations around Zoom around sort of why software functionality, hardware functionality was necessary to enable this for customers? Tell me about that.
Yeah, sure, Craig. So the topic of interoperability has always been a passion of mine. It's always been important in the industry, going back literally my entire career, because there are different protocols and standards that certain video systems are on. But as soon as you try to join other platforms, it always kind of required the need for different gateway solutions and specific solutions that would bridge, different platforms together. With Zoom rooms, right from the start, entering into this space, obviously Zoom's been around for about 12 years now. And when we built our Zoom room products, we knew that, it was going to be important for any type of room to be prepared to join a variety of scenarios. So right from the start with Zoom rooms, we had the ability, because there's so many SIP or H323 legacy video conferencing systems out there and different platforms and bridging services that use those protocols, that we built that into the core Zoom room product, that you could dial SIP or join a bridging service that runs through SIP. We've also had for years the ability to join into a variety of other meeting platforms. And, this required calendar integration with the Zoom rooms, and we would handle all of the, scraping of the meeting invitation right in the Zoom room solution, so that when a user walks in and they looked out at the, Logitech Zoom room controller, they're going to see their meetings, and there's a one-touch join button there. That meeting could be Zoom. It could be any of the platforms that you talked about there. And that's important, again, not just to keep the user experience simple. That really is important for adoption of video conferencing rooms, but it allows them to get to their meetings, doing it in an efficient manner when they can't always choose what platform that meeting is going to be on, right? So that's why it's super important to be able to support that. We've always been a big believer that this shouldn't be an upcharge or additional product or a third-party solution. We've built all this right into the core Zoom Room product. We recently, a few quarters back, enhanced or added some additional capabilities. We heard a lot from customers that, you know what, our users go into conference rooms. Sometimes they don't always schedule them in advance, or they might not know necessarily where they're going to take that call from. So they grab a room and they want to quickly get into a meeting, whether that's on Zoom or any of the platforms we've talked about, Teams, Google Meet, WebEx, etc. So that's where we added in some ad hoc capabilities for a user to walk in and join into any meeting platform just by tapping on the logo, which we'll show here in some images coming up. It could be the Teams icon or the Google Meet icon or WebEx, and just typing in the meeting ID. So it's more of an ad hoc on the fly experience. We still support the scheduled one-touch join experience into all these other platforms, but we've enhanced that and supplemented it with the ability to manually join in just by entering a meeting ID.
So as John mentioned, we're going to show an image of that in just a second. But John, I'm probably going to ask you about that direct guest join capability when we get to that slide as well, just so folks will have the visual to look at too. So going to the next section here, I also want to talk to John just about Zoom rooms in general. So we've kind of started to dive into the topic of Interop. We're going to go back into it more specifically in just a second. But, you know, there's just a lot of advantages. Also, Logitech ourselves, the company, is a Zoom Rooms-based customer. But there's just so many different advantages that you have when you, not even just from a staff perspective, but from an end user perspective, the ability to walk up, have certain camera controls within the meeting, join, ad hoc, direct guest join, all of that is sort of built in. But John, we've got some sort of key benefits that we identified here. Let's talk about this slide and the advantages of Zoom Rooms.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And you know, Logitech's been probably our longest standing hardware partner from a Zoom Rooms perspective, back to the early days. So we've been on this journey together for quite some time. Of course, a few years ago, we saw the introduction of more of the Android-based appliances with the Logitech Rally Bar series and whatnot. That's really simplified the experience of deploying Zoom Rooms. We've had Windows-based, you know, Logitech kits, bundles for quite some time, leveraging Logi cameras and other peripherals and whatnot. But the idea here around a native Zoom Room is exactly that. So we have our desktop and mobile clients. You get the best Zoom experience when you're on the native Zoom clients. That really goes for Zoom Rooms as well. It's really another Zoom client, right? That's running in a more appropriate scenario on a room-based system. And we pack a lot into the native experience when it is a Zoom Room joining into a Zoom meeting. You know, we can support the ability to join the other platforms, but of course the magic comes in when it's our native room system running on Logitech hardware joining into Zoom meetings. Some of those benefits here you can see listed. The innovations that we've built into the experience, I think, are absolutely number one on the list here. And things like our Smart Gallery, for example. So we developed this a couple years back, and it's how we're tackling this topic of hybrid meeting equity, where now, you know, people are returning to offices, they're getting back into conference rooms to join meetings, but you still have virtual participants. And so these meetings in nature are always going to be hybrid, right? Where you have you know, people from both sides. And so things like Smart Gallery allow us to use AI and the power of, you know, Logi cameras to frame the individual faces of participants in the room and then represent them via multiple video streams back into the Zoom meeting. So when anyone's on that meeting, whether they're working from home or sitting in a conference room, everyone is represented, you know, on that level playing field. They're represented more prominently. You can see and hear everyone individually. And you're not just looking at a room full of people, right? So Smart Gallery, we expanded that with Intelligent Director recently, where you can use today 3 Logitech Rally cameras working with a Zoom Room, you know, computer running the application that scales that Smart Gallery type experience to larger rooms. So that's just one example of some of the industry-leading innovations that we brought to market together that come right as part of the core Zoom Room product. So that's been a huge hit. Zoom is known for being simple to use, right? We saw it early in the pandemic where, you had 6-year-olds, joining into kindergarten classes, and you had, 85-year-olds, joining happy hours and birthdays and anniversaries and all the things that we needed to do to keep the world moving, both personally and professionally. So we've always prided ourselves on the simple user experience. And that goes for rooms too, right? It's not just joining Zoom from your mobile or desktop. When you walk into a physical conference room that's running Zoom rooms, it's just as simple. The icons are the same. It's very familiar. It's very easy. It's user intuitive. But the same goes for the admin side, right? We want to make it easy for users, but it's got to be simple to deploy, manage, and support on the back end for these administrators that are deploying tens, hundreds, maybe even thousands of rooms across, an enterprise organization. So the simplicity end to end, whether it's admin or user, is super important there. The hardware flexibility. Some of our customers really like the new Android appliances. Some still like to deploy Windows-based Zoom rooms because they have their own ways to, deploy and manage and support those environments. And that's the beauty of the partnership with Zoom and Logi, is that we have flexibility in terms of Android-based or Windows-based kits. All sorts of different appropriately sized systems for huddle rooms, small, medium, large, multi-camera rooms, and whatnot. So the hardware
that even with the same stuff you still mentioned too, right? Like that's the great part. You talk about that flexibility, but then you're also getting the same multi-stream capability. You're still getting the same simplicity and administration.
Yep. Absolutely. And same user experience too. So if you walk into a 3-person huddle room and then your next meeting is in an 18-person boardroom, it's going to look and feel the same. So it's not going to, cause users to panic and not know how to use that particular system. And so the user adoption angle there is helpful. When we talk about configuration flexibility, another major benefit of Zoom rooms, because we have the ability very easily, right when you're in the configuration of a Zoom room, to set up a single, dual, or even triple screen Zoom room system. And a lot of the Logi portfolio supports as many as 3 screens. We recently actually added in a 4th display option for more of a confidence monitor for, trainers, teachers, professors, or events and whatnot. So depending on the room size or the use case, the Logi and Zoom story together is we can tackle that flexibility of how we want to configure systems, how many displays we need, where we might need to supplement additional microphone pods, which is a big value of the Logi portfolio with your embedded microphones in the devices, plus the additional mic pods or third-party audio in certain situations. And even, the ability to take, a separate interactive touch display that's running on something like a Logi Roommate or a Rally Bar, and bring additional interactive whiteboard capabilities into a Zoom room, either on the primary system or as companion whiteboard. So again, depending on the scenario, we can scale Zoom rooms into whatever the use case is, right? It could be a huddle room all the way up to an auditorium, right? Or a very large event space, everything in between. So the configuration flexibility is one that our customers love. I put value adds in here because there's a lot that gets packed into the Zoom Room licensing in the Zoom Room core product. A big example there is digital signage. So when these conference room systems are not being used for meetings or screen sharing when they're sitting there, customers love the ability to leverage our digital signage to push out employee communications, maybe upcoming events. Maybe in the room, they just want to, put some signage up there that will instruct users on how to start a meeting or how to leverage a new feature of the Zoom rooms and whatnot. And this doesn't just go for signage on Zoom rooms. You can actually scale that to any display or TV throughout the entire, offices and campuses of organizations. And it's all packed into just a single Zoom room license allows customers to deploy unlimited signage. You can run that on, different compute options. A lot of customers love to run our digital signage on the Logi Roommate, codec box. So one example there, we have our virtual kiosks that are part of the solution, scheduling displays, which, we have a great synergy there with our product line with the Logitech scheduler. So there's more than just rooms that goes into this. And we've launched our workspace reservation platform. That's really a hoteling and hot desking solution that allows people to reserve rooms and desks. Again, really supporting that hybrid flexible work model and great, again, synergy on the portfolio of Zoom software, Logi hardware with some intelligent docking stations and things like that we're bringing in to support those types of needs. And of course, the reason we're here today, Interop, right? It's a huge advantage of Zoom Rooms that we've built in all this Interop capabilities, and that right out of the box, the Zoom Room can do all the things we talked about earlier, joining different platforms and whatnot, without the need for us to say go buy an Interop service or a gateway service that needs to be purchased through a third party and deployed to support these types of use cases. So all this together really is where we see ourselves very well positioned in the market from a Zoom Rooms perspective. In those scenarios where we are running native Zoom Rooms joining into native Zoom meetings and whatnot.
I just want to make a couple points to kind of reemphasize a few things that we mentioned here, because I think from a Logitech portfolio standpoint, flexibility is really the name of the game. Where we're in this day and age that's hybrid now, where there just really is, first of all, no playbook, number one, and then number two, there's just no one size fits all, right? And so we're at this point where it's like, as I talk to coworkers, a lot of it's like about how can we take the actions and the behaviors that we had pre-pandemic and begin to translate that into a hybrid workspace. So I was just in a meeting where we had our digital whiteboard, but then we've also got Scribe and our one-touch, just what's called not display, but one-touch presentation with the purple button that's also enabled in a Zoom room as well. And it's like if that's a preference of yours and that's something that you need for that particular room or that team, we have it. And so it's sort of the idea of being able to have a room meet various different types of needs based on exactly what that type of room needs to be sort of developed for is really what we're trying to do with Logitech and also with Zoom. And then I do think that the other point that just deserves an extra call out is, John, even something as simple as, oh, this room has a panel that tells me green if I can enter and red, do not enter this room because there's someone in there, but there's frosted glass. So I didn't actually know. That's actually something that a lot of people don't think about when it comes to a video conference room. Most people say like, okay, I've got my computer, I've got my webcam. Isn't a room essentially the same thing, but with a larger television and a larger camera? No, that is not the case. There's a lot of it's not even nuanced at this point, extremely beneficial features and things that you need, like the ability to say when a room is scheduled, the ability to do a multi-stream and make that meeting more equitable so that you can pull people out into separate squares and have them have their own place in the gallery. Like, we're really not, I think, sometimes thinking about rooms at this level, but we need to be, because that's the place that we're in right now.
Yeah, 100%. And space utilization is really important. So not only seeing which rooms are available or if a room is reserved, but actually walking up and being able to schedule it for maybe later that day, right from the Logitech scheduler, for example. Or what happens in the event that people book a room and they decide to work from home that day, right? Is that room just sitting there unused? So leveraging the tools and what's built into the Zoom platform and in the Logi hardware there, we can actually automate the process of releasing that room in the event of a no-show. And you can configure that right down to exactly how many minutes after the meeting was supposed to start that you want to say, you know what, no one's in here. Let's open this up so that scheduler sitting outside the room turns green and it shows people this is available now. This was booked, but it's open, right? And so just little things like that we've built in that help with not just the usability, but also like optimizing these resources. Conference rooms are, a hot commodity in a lot of companies, right? And so you want to make sure that they're not going unused, right?
Yeah. I mean, it may even be the topic of a future webinar, right? But I think really emphasizing the value add that comes with having a Zoom room. We spent a good 10 minutes on it here, but we really do want to emphasize that point, because it's not just Interop that we're talking about. We're talking about Zoom rooms and Interop. Okay, now the screen that we've been waiting for, we've got some scheduled pieces here on the side, but I want to talk about what we're seeing on the right hand side first, and then second, I want to talk again about the direct guest join options that we're going to have on the paneling side, or the scheduling panel here on the left side as well. But let's talk about these buttons that we're seeing on the right hand side first, John.
Sure. Absolutely. So what you're seeing on the right-hand side, of course, the three icons across the top of the Zoom Room controller here, these are standard. So these are available any Zoom Room that you deploy. You're going to see, the new meeting button, a join button where you can manually punch in the Zoom meeting ID. or share content. So pretty self-explanatory. The icons, again, look very consistent with what you see at mobile and desktop. On the bottom row is really, where a lot of the magic comes into play. And what's nice about this is our customers have the ability on the admin side to choose, do they want to put these buttons on? Because some of them don't. They expect all their meetings to just be Zoom. Others, may decide whether to put these, we call them home screen shortcuts, to these other meeting platforms. You can choose which ones you want to put on, make available on the Zoom Room controller, which ones you don't. And it's a simple checkbox in the admin portal. This is not a big configuration. Once these are added in there, user walks in. They certainly can easily join their Zoom meetings, but it's very simple to say, you know what, this meeting is a WebEx meeting. I know I have to get in there. Let me tap the WebEx button. It's going to prompt you to punch in the meeting ID. If there's a passcode, punch that in as well, and you're in, right? So it's as simple as that. And again, that ad hoc experience was an important component because meetings change, plans change. People may have, scheduled a meeting thinking they were going to be hosting it from home, and all of a sudden they're in the office, or they, need to join a meeting and they didn't plan ahead. They grab whatever room is available. They have a path to easily get into any of those meetings, whether it was planned ahead or not, right?
And then, we had mentioned this earlier, but I'd like to just kind of call it out again. When a meeting is scheduled on a different platform, we're going to see that on the left. Tell me just a couple minutes about that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, typically we always recommend Zoom rooms to be configured with calendar integration. That helps with the ability to, to not only reserve the room, but to, automatically capture the meeting information that's part of that calendar invite and display, the meeting join info directly on the Zoom Room controller. So that's where you see, the ability here to tap one button to start a meeting or join it, depending on if you're the host or, an attendee. So the one-touch join experience, to me, that's the nirvana. That's the Disney World experience. As long as things have planned ahead, it doesn't get any simpler as, tapping one button, or even using voice commands and some of the other ways that we can initiate joining a meeting. But the nice thing about this is, we see, about four meetings here. I mean, this could be a Zoom meeting, and then the next meeting could be WebEx, and the next one Teams and Google Meet, and it's the same user experience there. So again, if it's scheduled, it doesn't get any simpler than this. But if they didn't schedule it ahead, they still have a very easy path to get into all these meetings. That's what it really comes down to. If you think about Interop at a very high level, and this comes up a lot, users will say, hey, I can put 4 or 5, different meeting apps on my phone. I can load multiple meeting apps on my laptop and join them. Like, why can't I do that on the room side? There's a lot of challenges with that concept of trying to run multiple apps all on a single room system. So that's why, choosing the right native experience, like running Zoom rooms as the primary solution with the ability to join other platforms is really important, because we don't have the ability, like our mobile phones, to add multiple apps all to the same, system there. So keeping things flexible, making it easy, both on the users and, again, going back to the admins, very easy to support the ability. This opens up a world for them. If they're investing in conference room technology, they need to be prepared for a lot of scenarios there. And so we have, we've done a lot of work with Google and with Microsoft and with, Cisco WebEx for these. That doesn't capture every single use case. So there might be emerging meeting platforms that are not as popular, but you might have to join occasionally. So we'll talk about some of the other ways that we together have tackled interoperability, beyond just the major primary meeting services that we see represented on this image and what we've talked about so far.
Awesome. So it's a great segue. So what we're going to transition into next is, we've talked with John about the software-based interop that's here on the tap device. But what I'm going to show here is we've got our brand new Rally Bar huddle that just came out. One of the modes that's available is what we call BYOD mode, that can be used with a Rally Bar Mini, Rally Bar huddle. But one of the other options that we found is the hardware-based approach to interop. So as John mentioned, you may not be on a Google Meet, a WebEx, or a Microsoft Teams meeting. You may be on, maybe it's a customer proprietary video chat or video conferencing software. Maybe you're in a blue jeans meeting, right? Something that's not one of those three items. How is it that we can still have additional flexibility to allow for customers and end users to be able to do that? Well, I think from a hardware standpoint, we've got two plugs that come out of the Rally Bar. We've got one that's an HDMI that we can mirror and share our screen, but we've got another one that's USB-C, where we're able to then provide camera control through the computer. But when we do that, if you look at the image on the right, we've got a BYOD mode that will be engaged within the Zoom room on the tap device. John, tell us about that.
Yeah, this is huge here. So this, it tends to be maybe a secondary user experience. So the primary might be focused around getting into Zoom meetings in the major platforms. But this BYOD mode is super important as well, because these microphone arrays that are built into the Rally appliances are fantastic. The cameras are super high quality. They're built for conference rooms, right? And the speakers that are built into these appliances, these are all top notch. They're designed for rooms. So bringing a laptop into a conference room and trying to position it to capture the room has never been successful. But when it's as simple as plugging in those two cables, HDMI and the USB-C cable, now we have the ability, think of it as sort of taking over that room system as if it is a webcam on steroids, right? So we are accessing those high quality cameras, speakers, microphone arrays that are built into the devices. We're still, processing and joining the meeting from our personal laptop, but instead of, selecting my Brio 505, which is my new favorite webcam, I'm using that room hardware, so it's as simple as it gets. When you initiate this process, it will automatically recognize it. You're going to use the conference room, devices there. And the big thing here is, like you mentioned, Craig, is when you look at the Zoom Room controller, it's very obvious when you jump over to what we call BYOD mode, bring your own device for those that are not familiar with it. And we still get some, kind of basic meeting controls there from the Zoom Room controller, the Logitech Tap IP or Tap Zoom Room controller there. So it makes it nice and easy, because there is, two different kind of modes there. There's the native mode joining platforms, but, obviously when you plug in those cables, we need to make it as simple on the end user to navigate that experience when they do need to initiate BYOD mode.
Very cool. Very cool. So we've got a video that we'll probably overlay during part of this panel here. But one of the things that I love about it is that everything else in the room is still staying online during BYOD mode as well. And I think that that's just worth a call out. So your tap schedule is still, depicting exactly that the room is reserved and kind of what's happening. You can still, reserve it, right after that meeting is done. But I think that in addition to the functionality of the camera and the computer itself, just having that additional functionality is really helpful for the room too.
Yeah, that's a great point, because, what we don't want is, this is set up as, a Zoom room, and, these are deployed across an organization. When their users do, need to leverage BYOD mode, what we don't want is for it to look like that Zoom room is all of a sudden down, right? Or disconnected to the Zoom service, and that the admins that are watching that are getting all sorts of alerts and things like that. The fact that we can keep that system online and keep the status appropriate and make it simple on the user is, that's a huge advantage there. And even little things that we might not think about, that USB-C cable that we're plugging into our laptop to kind of, enable all this functionality, that can charge your laptop too, right? There's multiple functionalities. So you're not running all these different cables, to conference rooms. It gets pretty simple to just go ahead and let users plug in and collaborate in whatever way that they need to, right?
And that's another great segue, because the way we're going to end today's seminar is with this item here. So we're not talking about a third way to do interop. We're still talking about the second way, BYOD mode in a room. But we're going to do it with a Logitech Swytch device. And the theory and the reason why we have developed it was really because of this. So in the way I had just positioned it, where you've got one HDMI cable coming from the Rally Bar, you've got one USB cable coming from the Rally Bar, that doesn't always play out in the way that we think it's going to play out. Sometimes you've got the HDMI cable and the user comes in with a MacBook that does not have the HDMI port. So then you put it on the user to say, okay, well, I need to bring this dongle with me to this room, or you provide the dongle in the room, but the dongle is not glued to the HDMI cable. Sometimes these things get legs, right? And they sort of run away. And I think we see this a lot. And so this is a picture that we're seeing here where you've got many different dongles sitting here on the table. You've also sometimes got power cords because you need to be able to charge your laptop at the same time. And what if it dies in the middle of the meeting? And so the concept of Logitech Swytch is providing a single cable option that has both a USB-A port on it, as well as a USB-C that has charging capabilities. And we use DisplayLink technology to be able to just plug that into your computer and then move into BYOD mode. It's just a pretty elegant, simple solution that folks can have to, again, enable BYOD mode, enable a hardware-based interrupt for the rooms that really need that added flexibility. And now with Zoom BYOD mode, we're able to also have certain degrees of camera controls from the tap device that's right there. The room stays online. So again, just working together with our partners to make sure that folks have both flexibility as well as just the best experience in the room. So
And
just wanted
it simplifies it so much with the Logi Switch. I love it. I mean, I'm a MacBook user. I don't have an HDMI, access directly on my laptop anymore, of course, so that already requires dongles and whatnot. So the minimization of cabling in the room and simplifying it with just boiling it down to just a single cable that can plug into laptops and do everything we've talked about, charge the laptop, initiate BYOD mode without having to plug multiple cables in. This has been a game changer for a lot of our customers. They love it. Again, they want their users to have the most simple, easiest experience. If it takes 5 or 10 minutes to join a meeting, and you multiply that by their employees and how many meetings are in a week, month, year, there's a lot of loss of productivity. So it's important for us to be prepared for all scenarios, scheduled meetings on all the major meeting platforms or BYOD mode to get people to the they need to get to the meat of these meetings, right? So they need to dive right in, and we need to make that as easy as possible. And I think that's really an area where the Logi and Zoom alliance has been really strong, right? We have such complementary product portfolios, all the devices that you all have. This has been very rooms focused, but of course we've got devices that really integrate so seamlessly with the Zoom platform across everything we're doing these days with meetings and webinar and phone and contact center and rooms and whatnot. So probably more topics to tackle in future sessions with you. But yeah, just really appreciative of everything that Logi has done, building products that work well with our software platform.
Awesome. Okay, so John, talked about Interop today. We've identified that there are probably a number of other topics that I'm sure the folks will be talking about and discussing and presenting in the future. But anything else, any parting messages you want to give for the day?
We have Zoomtopia coming up. So I'm looking forward to seeing you and my Logi friends there. That's our user conference in San Jose, which is close to our headquarters. That's coming up in early October. Would love to see some of the audience there in person, but we do have a virtual component there. So you could register virtually, pick your own sessions. So great way to get up to the latest and greatest on all things, Zoom and the Zoom platform. We certainly tie a lot of new product announcements and things like that through that week. So that's, again, the first week of October. I'll, have to give a little plug there. The future's bright between Logi and Zoom. We're not just focused on rooms, as mentioned. The emergence of hoteling and hot desking and reservation platforms and systems have become really important as a lot of companies are condensing their real estate footprints. So Zoom workspace reservation, is a very hot topic that we can potentially tackle in the future. And again, just another area where we have so much synergy between our organizations, from the room to different devices that can go on the individual hot desks. With the Logi Dock and the Logi Dock Flex and whatnot. So yeah, super excited about really all things Zoom Spaces. That's our kind of umbrella marketing term for, rooms is Zoom Rooms is a big part of that, but we're doing a whole lot more across the workplace. And we'll be launching some new products that kind of go along with that in the coming months as well. So stay tuned.
Yep, that will definitely be a topic of conversation in the very near future. John, it's great to have you. First topic, Interop. We hope folks found this educational, hope found it informative, and we will see you the next time.